Welcome back to the deep end. Today we're not just wading in, we are jumping straight into the fire. We're talking about high stakes.
We really are.
We're talking about life and death, and believe it or not, we are also talking about how to get your toddler to go to bed on time without completely losing your mind.
It is a strange combination, isn't it? Domestic disputes and international terrorism. But that is I think, the beauty of the material we're looking at today.
It really is. Today we are unpacking Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, Voss isn't some academic just theorizing in an ivory tower.
Not at all.
This guy was the FBI's lead international kidnapping negotiator. He spent decades, literally decades, facing down terrorists, bank robbers, kidnappers, you name it.
Exactly. And the core premise here is it's fascinating because it challenges everything we think we know about negotiation. We usually think of it as this logical, rational process. You want X, I want Y, so let's meet in the middle.
Right, let's just split the difference.
But Voss argues that splitting the difference is actually a terrible idea. In fact, he says it can be, well, disastrous.
Right. It's in the title, Never Split the Difference. I mean, you can't exactly split the difference with a kidnapper, can you? Okay, you took 4 hostages. How about you give me 2 back and we'll call it a day?
Exactly. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And what makes this deep dive so exciting is that we are going to see how the tools he developed in those, life or death scenarios, like the calm voice, the specific questions, the psychology of influence, how they apply to everyday life.
Like buying a car.
Buying a car, getting a raise, dealing with a difficult contractor. The principles are the same.
So let's set the scene with the hook, because the book opens with this incredible story that I think perfectly encapsulates the clash between the old way and Voss's way. It's the Harvard ambush.
Yes, the Harvard ambush.
Let's paint the picture here. It's 2006.
Right, 2006. Chris Voss is, a street-smart former beat cop from Kansas City. He's now a top FBI agent. He's seen the ugly side of humanity. He's dealt with people in crisis, real crisis. And now he walks into a room at Harvard Law School.
And this isn't just any classroom. This is the executive negotiation course. So the room is probably filled with future CEOs, high-powered litigators.
The best of the best.
The kind of people who eat conflict for breakfast. And Voss, well, he admits he feels like a fish out of water. He's intimidated. He's thinking, I'm just a cop. What am I doing here with the intellectual elite?
He is. And he's invited to a chat with Robert Mnookin. Now, for those who don't know, Mnookin is a titan in this world.
A giant.
He runs the Harvard Negotiation Research Project. He literally wrote some of the seminal books on conflict. So Voss thinks they're just going to have coffee, a friendly chat.
But that's not what happens.
No. He sits down, Mnookin's secretary puts a tape recorder on the table, clicks it on, and Mnookin just smiles and says, "We've got your son, Voss. Give us $1 million or he dies."
Talk about a nightmare scenario. I mean, I know it's a role play, but your heart rate has to just spike through the roof.
Oh, absolutely.
You're being tested by the master in front of an audience of sharks.
And Mnookin is playing the role of the kidnapper, but he's using all the classic, rational bargaining theories that he teaches. He wants to haggle. He wants to trade. He's expecting Voss to counteroffer.
Right. The old school way.
Yeah.
The logical way. Mnookin says $1 million, so he's expecting Voss to come back and say, "I don't have that. How about 100,000?"
Exactly. That is the rational game. That's how business is supposed to work. But Voss doesn't do that. He doesn't use logic. He doesn't get aggressive. He does something that completely, utterly flusters them.
He asks a question, a very simple, repetitive question.
He just smiles, uses this calm voice, and says, "How am I supposed to do that?"
How am I supposed to do that? That's it. That's the opening move.
That is it. And Mnookin, the brilliant Harvard professor, he literally pauses. He doesn't know what to say. Voss describes him looking at him with this amused pity, like he's dealing with a simpleton who just doesn't understand the game.
So Mnookin tries to up the ante.
He does. He pushes back hard. He says, "So you're okay with me killing your son?"
That's brutal, even in a role play.
It is. And Voss, again using this soft, almost apologetic voice, simply says, "I'm sorry, Robert. How do I know he's even alive? I'm sorry, but how can I get you any money at all if I don't even know he's alive?"
And this just short-circuits the professor's brain.
Completely. Because they're playing a game of rational bargaining. What we'll get into as System 2 thinking. Voss is playing an entirely different game, a game of emotional intelligence.
He's not playing chess, he's playing poker.
Or maybe not even poker. It's something else entirely. Every time they make a demand, he just gently asks, "How am I supposed to do that?" And it forces them to stop and think about his problem. It shifts the burden of solving the dilemma onto the kidnapper.
I just love the image of this. You have the Harvard elite probably getting red in the face, completely flustered, because this FBI guy just keeps asking them for help.
And eventually Mnookin just throws up his hands.
Yeah.
Voss didn't just hold his own, he won. And he didn't win by out-reasoning them. He won by emotionally exhausting them. And that, I think, is the mission of this deep dive. We need to unpack why the old way of rational problem-solving so often fails, and how this tactical empathy actually works.
Okay, so let's unpack that first section, the failure of logic. Because I think most of us, myself included, were taught that negotiation is about being rational. You separate the people from the problem, right? That's the classic getting to yes strategy.
That was the Bible of negotiation for a long, long time. Getting to Yes, published in 1981 by Roger Fisher and William Ury. It was brilliant for its time. It really was.
It systematized things.
It did. It systematized problem solving. The idea was to overcome the emotional brain, the irrational beast within, with rational, cooperative problem solving. Focus on interests, not positions. Find a win-win.
Which sounds great on paper. Everyone sits down, we're all reasonable adults, let's find a solution that works for everyone. But Voss says there is a massive, massive problem with that in the real world.
The problem is reality. Humans are not rational actors. We like to think we are, but we're not. And Voss points to the tragic failures that really forced the FBI to reevaluate everything. Specifically, Ruby Ridge in 1992 and Waco in 1993.
Oh, wow. Yeah, those were absolute disasters.
They were. And in the aftermath, the FBI had to ask some really hard questions. Why did our methods fail so spectacularly? Why did rational bargaining not work?
Because at Waco, you had David Koresh.
Exactly. You have David Koresh, who genuinely believes he's the Messiah. You can't use a win-win economic analysis with a guy who thinks he is Jesus Christ and is actively preparing for the apocalypse. It's a fundamental mismatch of worldviews.
It's like trying to use algebra to explain poetry. You're speaking a different language. You're not even in the same ballpark.
You're not even in the same universe. The FBI realized that in high-stakes crises, people are in a deeply emotional state. They are not thinking with their logical brain. They are reacting with their animal brain, their survival brain.
This brings us to the science part of this, which I find fascinating. We have to talk about Daniel Kahneman. His name pops up everywhere in behavioral economics, doesn't it? Thinking, fast and slow.
It does, and it is absolutely crucial for understanding why Voss's techniques work. Kahneman describes two systems of thinking in the human brain. System one is fast, instinctive, emotional. It's the animal mind. It's the part of you that gets a gut feeling about someone.
Or snaps at your spouse when you're hungry.
That is a perfect example. That's pure system one. And system two?
That's the slow, logical one.
Exactly. System two is slow, deliberative, and logical. It's the part of you that does long division, or compares mortgage rates, or tries to assemble IKEA furniture.
And the old way of negotiating, the getting to yes style, was all about trying to talk directly to system two.
Correct. It assumed that if you just present a logical argument, System 2 will take over and make a rational choice. But here is the key insight that Voss pulls from Kahneman. System 1 guides and steers System 2.
Wait, say that again. That feels really important.
System 1, the emotional animal mind, is the driver. System 2 is just the passenger, and its main job is to rationalize where the driver is already going.
So my emotions are deciding where to go, and my logic is just making up a story about why it was a good idea to go there.
That's it. Kahneman uses the analogy of an elephant and a rider. The elephant is your System 1 emotion. The rider on top is your System 2 logic. Now, the rider can try to steer the elephant, but if that 6-ton elephant decides it wants to charge to the left, there's absolutely nothing the rider can do about it.
Wow.
All the rider can do is hang on and then, after the fact, come up with a very logical-sounding reason for why going left was an excellent strategic decision.
So if you can't influence the elephant, the animal mind, the emotions, the fears, you will never, ever get to the rational mind. The rider is irrelevant if the elephant is spooked.
You got it. So when Voss asked that Harvard professor, how am I supposed to do that? He wasn't asking a logical System 2 question. He was engaging the professor's System 1. He was jamming the processor. He was forcing the professor to stop, feel the dilemma, and empathize with his situation.
He was navigating the irrationality instead of trying to fight it.
Voss realized that if you treat a negotiation like a math problem, you are going to lose. You have to treat it as a psychological investigation. You have to soothe the animal before you can talk to the man.
Which leads us directly to the core tool in Voss's kit, tactical empathy. Now, I have to be honest, when I first hear the word empathy, I think of something soft. I think of hugs. I think of, I feel your pain. or sympathy. But Voss is very, very specific that this is not sympathy.
It is definitely not sympathy, and it's not about being nice. Sympathy is agreeing with someone or feeling sorry for them. Oh, you poor thing.
Yeah.
Tactical empathy is completely different. Voss calls it emotional intelligence on steroids.
I love that description, but what does it actually look like in practice? How do you do it?
It's the ability to recognize the perspective of a counterpart and then vocalize that recognition. It's simply about understanding where they are coming from. The key is, it's not about agreeing with them.
So I can understand your position without agreeing that your position is right.
Precisely. You can use tactical empathy with a terrorist and still plan to arrest them in an hour. It's about making the other person feel understood. Because when a person feels understood, a switch flips in their brain. They disarm. They become less defensive.
Okay, so how do we do it? Because it sounds a bit abstract, but Voss gives us very specific, practical tools. The first one is the voice.
The late-night FM DJ voice.
Yes, the late-night FM DJ voice. I've been practicing this in the mirror. I have to say, it feels a little ridiculous at first.
It does, but let's analyze why it works. The description is very specific. Deep, soft, slow, and calming. And most importantly, you use a downward inflection at the end of sentences.
So instead of saying, put the gun down, with your voice going up at the end, which sounds panicked and just spikes the adrenaline in the room.
You calmly and slowly say, it seems like you don't want to go back to jail, with your voice going down at the end.
That downward inflection. It sounds final, but not aggressive. It sounds certain.
Exactly. The downward inflection signals certainty and authority, but the soft, slow tone signals safety. It triggers a neurochemical reaction in the other person's brain that literally calms them down.
Yeah.
It signals, I am in control, but I am not a threat to you.
It's amazing how much tone matters. Voss mentions that the direct, assertive voice, the do this now voice, almost always just causes pushback. It signals dominance, and the other person's animal brain instantly wants to fight back.
Right. If you come in hot, they come in hot. It's just human nature. Mirror neurons kick in. But if you come in calm, deep, and slow, you can actually lower their heart rate just by the way you are speaking. You are de-escalating the situation with sound waves.
Okay, so we have the voice. We're sounding like a smooth jazz DJ. Now we need the words. And this brings us to what he calls the Jedi mind trick, mirroring.
Mirroring is deceptively, almost foolishly simple. In the FBI context, a mirror is just repeating the last 1 to 3 critical words of what someone has just said.
Okay, I have to stop you there. Mirroring. I've read the notes on this, and honestly, it sounds incredibly annoying.
Annoying. How so?
Well, if I'm talking to you, and every time I finish a sentence, you just repeat the last 3 words back to me, I'm going to think you're mocking me. Or that there's an echo on the line. Does this actually work in the real world without the other person getting really mad?
It's a completely valid fear. And if you do it robotically like a parrot, yes, they will get mad. Or at least very irritated. The nuance, the entire magic of it is in the delivery. It's not just the words, it's the tone of genuine curiosity.
So you can't just deadpan it, got really mad.
No, you have to have that upward inquisitive inflection at the end. It can't be a statement, it has to be a question. Got really mad. And I didn't quite catch that, or that sounds important. Can you please explain what you mean by that?
I see. So it's less about the repetition itself and more about the signal you're sending, which is, please, help me understand.
Precisely. You are putting a spotlight on them and handing them a microphone. And the thing is, people love to talk about themselves. They love to clarify their position. So when you mirror, their brain doesn't register repetition. It registers, this person is listening intently and I need to expand on my point.
There was that study with the waiters, right? This just blew my mind.
The Richard Wiseman study, yeah. It's a fantastic real-world example. He studied waiters in a restaurant. One group used positive reinforcement, saying, great, no problem, sure thing, when taking orders. The other group was instructed to simply mirror the order back to the customer perfectly, word for word.
And the result?
The waiters who mirrored got 70% more in tips.
70%? Just for repeating the words? That is absolutely insane.
It shows how deep this subconscious need for connection and being heard really is. When you mirror someone, you're communicating, I am like you, I understand you. It creates an instant, subtle rapport.
And in a negotiation, it buys you time, right? If someone shouts a demand at you, you don't have to have an answer immediately.
That's one of its best uses.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic way to stall and gather intelligence. If someone says, this is my final offer, take it or leave it. Instead of panicking, you just calmly say, leave it.
And they'll start talking.
They will almost always start explaining themselves. They'll say, well, I mean, if we can't make a deal today, my boss is going to pull the plug. And boom, You just learned a critical piece of information. Their boss is the real deadline, not them. They revealed their strategy without you having to ask a single direct question.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit further. So we are mirroring to get them talking. But what do we do when emotions are really running high? When the person is visibly upset or hostile? Voss talks about a tool called labeling.
Labeling is the next step up. It's about deactivating the negative and reinforcing the positive. And it comes back to that neuroscience we were talking about. Brain scan studies show that when we can give a name to an emotion, we move the activity from the amygdala, the brain's fear and anxiety center, to the prefrontal cortex, the rational problem-solving center.
So we are literally physically changing their brain state just by giving the emotion a name.
Yes, the act of observation and articulation diminishes the raw power of the emotion. But the phrasing, again, is absolutely critical. You don't say, "I think you are angry." That sounds like an accusation.
It sounds judgmental. You're angry. It makes me want to immediately deny it. No, I'm not, even if I am.
Right. So you use tentative neutral phrasing. You start with, "It seems like," "It sounds like," or "It looks like."
It seems like you're frustrated with how this is going. It sounds like you're under a lot of pressure to get this done.
Perfect. And notice there is no I in there. It's not, "I hear what you're saying." Voss absolutely hates that phrase. He says, "I hear you." Puts the focus on you, the speaker. It makes it about your ability to hear. You want the focus entirely on them and their experience.
There is this incredible story in the source material about the Harlem standoff. It really illustrates this. Voss is negotiating through a door with 3 fugitives. They are barricaded inside. They've got heavy weaponry. He's been there for 6 hours.
6 hours. Can you just imagine the tension? You have SWAT teams, snipers, the whole circus is outside. And Voss doesn't make a single demand. He doesn't tell them to come out. He doesn't threaten them. He just stands there outside the door and labels their fear.
He says things like, "It looks like you don't want to go back to jail."
And it seems like you're worried that if you open this door, we'll come in shooting.
He is verbalizing the absolute worst-case scenarios playing out in their heads. He's dragging the monsters out from under the bed and putting them in the middle of the room.
And by acknowledging those fears, without judgment, he diffuses their power. He's saying, "I see your fear. It's real, and we can talk about it."
And what happened in the end?
They surrendered.
Yeah.
Peacefully. And when they interviewed the fugitives later and asked them why they finally came out, they didn't say because Voss made a good argument or he offered us a good deal. They just said he calmed us down. That's the power of labeling.
That leads right into one of the boldest tactics in the book, the accusation audit. This is basically taking labeling to the absolute extreme, right?
It is advanced labeling. It's preemptive. The idea is to list every terrible thing the other person could possibly be thinking about you, and you say it first.
It's like the ending of the movie 8 Mile, where Eminem raps all the bad things about himself, so his opponent has nothing left to say.
That is a perfect analogy. You disarm them by using their own ammunition against yourself. Voss talks about using this in business all the time. If you know a client is going to be unhappy about a delay, don't wait for them to yell at you.
You start the meeting.
You start the meeting by saying, "You are probably going to think I am the worst contractor you have ever met.
Yeah.
You're going to think I can't manage a schedule and that I don't care about your project at all."
It sounds completely suicidal. You're giving them the words to attack you with. Why would I ever want to put those ideas in their head?
It feels that way, but it does the exact opposite. It steals their thunder. When you say the worst things out loud, the other person's natural human instinct is often to reassure you. They'll say, "No, look, you're not the worst. It's just this part is frustrating." You've anchored the emotions so low that anything you say afterwards sounds reasonable by comparison.
So you are neutralizing the negative by calling it out first. You're clearing the emotional minefield before you have to walk through it.
Exactly. You get it all out in the open.
Now, speaking of things we are afraid of, let's talk about the word no.
Ah, yes. The power of no.
We are conditioned from birth to fear this word. Salespeople in particular are taught to get to yes. You know, the yes momentum. Do you like saving money? Yes. Do you want a better car for your family? Yes. The idea is if you get enough little yeses, you'll eventually get the big yes.
Right, the yes ladder. Voss argues that this is not only ineffective, but actually a trap. He calls it the counterfeit yes.
The counterfeit yes. I know I've used this a million times. It's when I want a salesperson to just go away. So I say, yeah, sure, that sounds interesting. Send me the info with absolutely zero intention of ever reading it.
Exactly. It's a defense mechanism. It's an escape route. But
Yeah.
No is different. Voss says no creates a feeling of safety, control, and autonomy for the person saying it.
Because when I say no, I've drawn a boundary. I am safe. I haven't committed to anything. I'm in the driver's seat.
Correct. So Voss's point is that no starts the negotiation. It isn't the end of it. When someone says no, they're not necessarily rejecting you forever. They're often just saying, I am not comfortable with this yet, or I need more information, or you haven't convinced me. So Voss suggests we should actually aim to get a no early on.
This flipped a switch for me when I was reading this. Instead of asking a cold call question like, do you have a few minutes to talk, which makes everyone immediately tighten up because they know a pitch is coming,
You ask, is now a bad time to talk?
it's a brilliant pivot. It's so simple. If I ask you, is now a bad time, and you say no, what have you just done?
You've implicitly given me permission to speak, but you feel like you've defended your time and maintained control. You said no to it being a bad time, which feels safe, but it means yes, it is a good time. It works on a subconscious level.
And then there is the magic email. I have to tell you, I actually tried this one after reading the notes for this, and it worked. But I was literally sweating when I hit send.
It's the one-sentence email for when you are being completely ignored.
Yes. You have a client or a potential partner who has just gone dark. You've sent follow-ups, nothing. You send one final email that just says, have you given up on this project?
Have you given up on this project?
Yeah.
It is so simple, but it's brutal and incredibly effective.
Why does it work so well? It feels aggressive to send it.
It feels aggressive to send, but it works because it triggers two powerful cognitive biases. One is safety. It gives them an easy way to say, no, of course not. The other, and the more powerful one, is loss aversion. Nobody wants to be the person who gives up. It implies failure. It implies walking away from something potentially valuable.
So they immediately scream no in their head.
Right. And they feel compelled to reply immediately just to prove that they haven't given up. They'll write back, no, we haven't given up at all. We've just been swamped with X, Y, and Z. And boom, the negotiation is back on. The silence is broken.
You're creating a safe opportunity for them to say no to the idea of quitting, which is actually a yes to continuing the conversation.
Precisely. You are using the safety of no to drive the conversation forward. It's a complete paradigm shift from the old always get to yes mentality.
Now, we need to distinguish between the types of agreement, because if yes can be counterfeit, how do we know when we're actually getting somewhere? Voss talks about the critical difference between hearing you're right and hearing that's right.
This is one of the most subtle but most important distinctions in the entire book. If you are in a negotiation or even just an argument with your spouse and they finally look at you and say, you're right, you might think you won.
I usually do. I feel a sense of relief. I think, finally, they see it my way. They agree with me.
But Voss says you're right is a disaster. It's often a verbal dismissal. It means, I agree with you in theory, now please shut up so I can leave. It's compliance, not commitment. It's what you say to a telemarketer right before you hang up the phone.
Okay, so what is that's right? How's that different?
That's right, is an epiphany. It's a moment of discovery for them. It's what someone says when you have summarized their perspective so perfectly, labeled their emotions so accurately, that they look at you with a kind of subtle shock and say, that's right. It means they feel completely and totally understood.
It's the click. The moment the tumblers in the lock fall into place.
It is the click. And once you get that's right, the barrier between you and them essentially dissolves. You are no longer on opposite sides of the table. You are now partners looking at the same problem.
The example from the text is incredibly intense. It's Voss coaching a negotiation with a terrorist in the Philippines, a guy named Abu Sabaya.
This was a kidnapping case involving an American named Jeffrey Schilling. And Sabaya was a brutal, hardened guy. He was used to people arguing with him, calling him a criminal, telling him he was wrong. Voss coached the on-the-ground negotiator to do the exact opposite, to just listen and summarize Sabaya's grievances.
And Sabaya was complaining about all sorts of things, right? War damages from decades ago, history, politics, things that had really nothing to do with the kidnapping itself.
Right. He was on a long, rambling tirade. And instead of arguing facts or saying, that's not relevant, the negotiator just kept summarizing and labeling. It sounds like you feel your people have been mistreated for centuries. It sounds like you believe you are owed reparations for what happened. He kept doing this without judgment until Sabaya finally stopped, paused, and said, that's right.
And that one phrase broke the deadlock.
It did. It didn't mean the FBI agreed with the terrorist politics. That's a key distinction here. They weren't validating the actions. They were validating the emotions behind the worldview. But it removed Sabaya's need to keep screaming just to be heard. Once he finally felt heard, they could actually start talking about the hostage. That's right. creates the breakthrough that makes real negotiation possible.
So, we've established rapport. We've used labels and mirrors. We've gotten our, that's right, we have leveled the emotional playing field. Now we need to actually bend reality. We need to start shaping the deal and get what we want. This brings us to the concept of bending reality and the illusion of control.
This is where we get into the nuts and bolts of steering the conversation where you want it to go. And the primary tool here is what Voss calls the calibrated question.
We touched on this in the intro with his golden question, how am I supposed to do that? But let's break down the rules for creating these questions. Voss says to avoid words like can, is, and are.
Right, because can, is, and are closed questions. They invite a simple yes or no answer. They don't generate information. They actually kill the conversation. Are you able to lower the price? No. End of conversation.
And he says to strictly avoid the word why.
Strictly.
Why avoid why? See what I did there?
I see it. You avoid why because it is inherently accusatory. Think about it in your own life. If I say to you, why did you do that? It sounds judgmental. It immediately puts you on the defensive. You have to justify yourself. It's the adult version of a parent scolding a child. It translates to, what were you thinking, you idiot?
So instead of why did you do that, you would rephrase it as what caused you to do that, or what were you hoping to accomplish?
Exactly. You stick to what and how. These are the workhorses of calibrated questions. What about this works for you? How can we solve this problem together? What is the biggest challenge we face here?
And the beauty of these questions is that they force the other person to think and to help you.
Voss calls it forced empathy. If I ask you, how am I supposed to achieve that? You cannot answer the question without looking at the world through my eyes for a moment. You have to consider my constraints, my problems, my perspective.
And it gives them the illusion of control.
Yes, that's the crucial part. The person answering the questions feels like they are in charge because they're the one talking and providing the answers. But the questioner is the one steering the entire framework of the conversation. You are subtly getting them to solve your problem for you.
There is a harrowing story in the book about a Haitian kidnapping that illustrates this perfectly. A woman named Julie is negotiating for the life of her partner, Jose.
This is a classic textbook example of the power of the how question under the most extreme pressure imaginable. The kidnappers wanted $150,000. Julie didn't have anything close to that. She was terrified. But she followed the system Voss's team taught her. Instead of saying, no, I can't pay that, which might have gotten Jose killed.
She just kept asking questions.
She just kept asking how questions. How can I get you any money if I don't know he's alive?
And after they provided proof of life,
she would say, thank you. Now, how am I supposed to get $150,000? She did it over and over. She was relentless, but always deferential. She wasn't fighting them. She was framing it as her asking them for help solving her problem, which was the problem of paying them.
And the kidnappers actually started trying to solve it for her. They started brainstorming on her behalf.
They did. It's incredible. They started bidding against themselves. They would drop the ransom amount because they realized through her questions that she genuinely couldn't pay the higher amount. They eventually dropped their other demands and even solved the logistical issues of the money drop for her. They felt like they were in control the whole time, but Julie was the one guiding them to the outcome she needed.
And Jose was eventually released.
He was, for a tiny fraction of the original demand, all because she refused to give a yes or a no and just spewed how. It's an incredible testament to having discipline and a system under fire.
It really is. So now let's say we're getting to the end of the deal. Execution and bargaining. Because people lie, people fake it, they give you a counterfeit yes. How do we know if a deal is actually real?
For this, Voss introduces the 738-55 rule, which comes from psychology studies by Professor Albert Morabian at UCLA. It states that in communication, the meaning we derive is only 7% from the words we use.
Only 7%.
Only 7%. 38% comes from the speaker's tone of voice, and the majority, 55%, comes from their body language and facial expressions.
So if the words say yes, but the tone is hesitant and their body language is all closed off, arms crossed?
The real answer is no, or at the very least, I'm not committed. You have to trust the nonverbal cues over the verbal ones. And if you spot that mismatch, that incongruence, you have to label it. I heard you say yes, but it sounds like there's some hesitation there.
You have to call it out. Gently.
You have to. Otherwise, you're walking away with a counterfeit yes that will fall apart later. Another tool for this is what he calls the rule of three. You need to get your counterpart to agree to the same thing 3 separate times in the same conversation.
Why 3 times? That seems a bit excessive.
Because it is really, really hard to fake it 3 times. The first time someone agrees, it might just be a brush off. The second time, they might just be reassuring you. But by the third time, if they are still agreeing, they've usually had to reveal the how of the implementation. It moves the conversation from a simple, I'll do it, to here's how I will get it done. That's when you know it's a real commitment. Yes.
And then when it comes to the actual numbers, the bare-knuckle bargaining Voss has a very specific, almost mathematical system, the Ackerman model.
Yes, this is a system that was developed by a former FBI and CIA agent, Mike Ackerman. It's a systematic approach to price negotiation, and it's designed to make you look like you are being squeezed to your absolute final limit.
Let's get into the weeds on the money here. Because eventually, after all the empathy and the mirrors and the labels, you have to agree on a number. Walk me through a live example. Let's say I'm buying a used truck. The seller has it listed for $20,000. That's their asking price. My goal is to pay no more than $15,000. How do I start using this model?
Okay, step one is internal. You set your target price. You said $15,000. So you lock that number in your head. Now, your first offer needs to be a bit shocking, not insulting, but it needs to reset their anchor. The model says you start at 65% of your target price.
65% of my target, not their asking price. So 65% of $15,000 is roughly $9,750. The guy's asking 20 grand. If I offer him less than 10, he's going to laugh me out of the dealership.
He might get angry. He might act insulted. That's where your tactical empathy comes right back in.
Yeah.
You use a calm, deferential tone. You say something like, I know this is going to sound low, and I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but based on my budget and what I've seen, the absolute best I can do is $9,750. You anchor him way, way low.
Okay, so he screams, he yells, I use my FM DJ voice, I stay calm. He eventually comes down to, say, $18,000. What's my next move? Do I split the difference and go to 13 or 14?
Never. You never split the difference.
Yeah.
You have a calculated plan. Your next offer is 85% of your target price.
Okay, so 85% of $15,000, that's $12,750.
Right. And notice that's a big jump from your first offer. A $3,000 jump. You're showing a lot of effort. You're communicating, look, I'm really stretching for you here. Then, if he's still not at your target, your third offer is 95% of your target.
Which is $14,250.
And your final offer is 100%, your target price of $15,000. But notice the increments of your raises. The first jump was big, $3,000. The next one was smaller, $1,500. The last one is even smaller, just $750.
It simulates running out of gas, like I'm squeezing every last drop out of my wallet.
Exactly. Psychologically, the seller sees your resistance increasing with each offer. They feel like they are hitting a solid wall. And this is the final brilliant touch, the last number cannot be a round number. It can't be $15,000.
It has to be a weird, precise number.
It has to be something like $15,127 or $14,982, something that sounds very specific.
Because $15,000 sounds like a decision I made. But $15,127 sounds like the exact contents of my bank account.
Precisely. Precise numbers feel calculated.
Yeah.
They feel immovable.
Yeah.
They signal that you have done the math, and that is literally every penny you have available. It adds a tremendous amount of psychological weight and credibility to your final offer.
That is fascinating. It creates a psychological barrier to them pushing further.
It does. And finally, in this section on bargaining, we have to talk about what Voss calls the F-bomb.
The F-bomb, not that one, fairness.
Exactly. He says it is one of the most powerful words in negotiation, but it is almost always used as a trap. When someone says, I just want what's fair.
Yeah, that immediately puts you on the defensive. If I'm not giving you what you want, then the implication is that I am being unfair. It's a jab.
It's a manipulation tactic. Voss suggests that the moment someone drops the F-bomb, you stop everything. You lean in, use a sincere voice, and say, I apologize. Let's stop right here. Please tell me how I'm treating you unfairly so I can fix it.
You ask them to define it, to show their work.
You force them to explain it, and usually they can't. It exposes the fact that they were just using the word as a lever to pressure you. But on the off chance you're missing something, this gives them a safe way to tell you.
Which brings us to the final thought that ties all of this together, the black swan, which is also the name of his consultancy group.
Right, the black swan concept. It comes from the old European idea that for centuries people thought all swans were white. It was an accepted fact. Then they sailed to Australia and saw black swans for the very first time. And that one piece of new information completely shattered their entire understanding of biology.
So in a negotiation, a black swan is a piece of hidden information that, if you knew it, would change absolutely everything.
And Voss says, in every single negotiation, there are 3 to 5 of these hidden pieces of information.
Always. Maybe the person you're negotiating with is about to be fired and just needs to close one more deal. Maybe the company you're selling to is secretly about to be acquired and they need your product to make it happen. You just don't know these things going in. And you can't find them if you are just arguing logic and pushing your own agenda.
You only find them by shutting up and listening intently, by letting the other side talk, by using tactical empathy to uncover those unknown unknowns. Voss gives the example of understanding the religion of your counterpart, not necessarily their faith, but their deeper driving worldview. What do they truly believe in? In one case, knowing a terrorist's deeper worldview allowed the FBI to offer a solution that saved face for him in the eyes of his community, which ended a deadly standoff.
So the goal isn't just to beat the other guy, it's to learn enough to change the entire game.
Exactly. And that is the final takeaway here. Negotiation is not a battle. It's not a wrestling match where your goal is to pin the other guy to the mat. It is a process of discovery.
I love that quote from the book. Conflict brings out truth, creativity, and resolution.
Don't avoid the hard conversations. Lean into them. Use the FMDJ voice. Ask how. Label the fears. Mirror their words. And you might just find that the things you thought were impossible barriers are actually bridges to a better deal for everyone.
So next time you are faced with a conflict, whether it's $1 million contract or just trying to decide where to go for dinner with your family, maybe try asking, how am I supposed to do that? And just see what happens.
Just don't blame us if it works a little too well.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you on the next one.
Stay curious.